canid. Okay, this meeting's being recorded. So sometimes you're going to see a dog-like animal, and it's easy to, there's certain key features to look at to distinguish the canids that we have on Long Island. The red fox doesn't always have this obvious reddish orange pelage. This is a red fox in its winter coat. And this is a photograph I got at this Sunken Meadow State Park. And a couple things you can see here. The back of the ears are black. The lower legs, especially the front part of the lower legs, is black. So they have black socks, we like to say. And not super obvious here, but at this angle, but it has a white tip tail. Those are all key things to keep in mind. Okay, and
use your up and down arrows.
yeah, I did that, but I got a little beep. It wants me to use the little arrow here on the screen. Okay. So this is a red fox. This is a female, and the summer coat looks very different. Has a lot of gray, but still you could see the black behind the ears. Even on the pups, you could see that, and you can see the black foot of one of these here. You can even see the white tip tail on some of the pups here, and obviously the white tip tail on the female. And this mark here is a mark that most wild canids have. It's a scent gland right here. It's a very dark color where the tail meets the rump. Oh, okay, there we go. And this is a canid that we thought was extinct on Long Island. This was the common fox on Long Island many years ago. But after forests got cleared for farmland, the red fox kind of took over as the dominant species. We found a roadkill gray fox in 1995 on Route 51 in Manorville. And we realized, wow, they're still hanging in there. And one of our campaigns is to remove this from the allowable trapping list on Long Island. The trapping regulations are governed by the DEC, and they're supposed to reflect the resource. So they have different wildlife management regions, and we feel that they can't justify having a trapping season for this species on Long Island. So, but it hasn't been an easy change in their regs, so we're working on that. And a couple key, now you notice there's a little bit of orange on this. But the real key to this is it doesn't have the black legs, doesn't have the black behind the ears. It has this black stripe though along the top of the tail, and black tip tail, not a white tip tail. So we're really interested in any sightings or roadkills that people happen to come across of this species on Long Island. Its distribution on Long Island is not known at all. And then here's the coyote. Now this is a coyote in its summer coat. Again, it looks very different. Its summer coat, from all leggy looking and lean, is the black scent gland where the tail meets the butt, and black tip tail. You don't always see this. So one of the interesting things about coyotes is the western coyote, when it expanded its range east, it interbred with some other canids, mostly domestic dog and wolf, as far as we could tell. And so there's a lot of variability in the pelage and some of these features. And this is the same, you know, this is the eastern coyote with its winter coat. It looks much huskier, a little shorter leg. It's just the length of the fur. But you could still see the black tip tail here. And he is one of the animals that we've been photographing in Nassau County this past year. We have a team of people that we formed a Long Island Coyote study group, and we have a bunch of projects going on, one of which is to collect scat at these sites and have it analyzed by the American Museum of Natural History to determine two basic things. One, get a DNA fingerprint for each animal, so we know how many animals there are, whether we have male and female pairs, and how related they are to the Bronx coyotes. And we're also collecting scat from Fisher's Island, which has had breeding coyotes for over a decade now. And that's such a small island, it's 2 square miles, that most of the juveniles are going to have to disperse off island. And it's possible that some might, they're good swimmers, like, you know, most dogs. It's possible they could make it over this way. But we're thinking that most of the coyotes that are getting established on Long Island are coming in from the breeding pairs in the Bronx. So, and the other thing we're doing with the scat is we're doing a year-round diet study and seeing how that changes with the season. So here's a Nassau County coyote. You look pretty typical. This is summertime, of course. And then here's a winter shot of a coyote on Fisher's Island. And you know, it's you could easily mistake this for someone's pet dog. This is a photo I took. My first, you know, personal encounter with coyotes was in graduate school, and I was doing research in Banff National Park. I was studying elk, and the western coyotes, you know, you would see them all the time. They mostly scavenged off of roadkills and things like that in the park. And they're pretty small. They're on the small side. They're like a medium dog. And no one ever really, you know, they definitely weren't intimidating or anything like that. So this animal at, you know, averaging 20, 25 pounds, as I said earlier, took advantage of our real war, long time, you know, over 100 years of persecution of the wolves. And when we wiped out the wolves in most of Eastern North America, coyote was able to fill that niche, that ecological niche that was vacant. And we'll go into that a little bit here. This is the eastern coyote, and it's, you know, significantly at its upper range, it's almost double the size of a western coyote. And because of that, and because of the very relatively recent DNA work that we've been able to figure out and actually break down the percentage of western coyote versus wolf versus domestic dog that's in this species, there's a lot of debate in the wildlife community about whether or not we should call this a new species. So this, and then when you think about this is kind of a fascinating thing that's happening right before our very eyes. This is, you know, the evolution of potentially a new species. We don't usually get to see that happen in a short period of time like this. So I went to St. Lawrence University as an undergrad, and my ecology professor was studying the coyotes that had moved into northern New York around 1920, 1930. And when I was a student in the 1970s, they were well established up in the, this is, St. Lawrence is north of the Adirondack Park, but they were well established in the Adirondack Park as well. And they were so much bigger than the western coyote they did not have the sophisticated lab techniques to break down the components of its DNA, its genetic material. They assumed that it bred with domestic dogs, and they called it the coy dog. That's what they referred to back in the 70s, this eastern coyote. So now we know that the eastern coyote has between definitely a majority of the DNA is western coyote, but it's got as much as a quarter of its DNA from wolf. And what happened is there were very few wolves left in southern Canada, and the coyotes that went north of the Great Lakes, moving eastward, had chance meetings with the few wolves that were around, and had young that could continue to breed. It kind of goes a little bit against the general rules of what a species can and can't do. They're not supposedly not to be able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring. But of course, that does happen sometimes. It's very unusual, and that's how one of the key elements of evolution. But as I said, it's really an amazing story that's been unraveled. And then, of course, it does have a little bit of domestic dog in it. And the amount of DNA, the ratios of these three species varies as you go, say, from Canada south into the southern states, where there really weren't many. They had the red wolf down there, and there's much less wolf DNA in those coyotes there. Really, it's just a really interesting story. So this is just a recap of that. This was the most likely distribution of the coyote before European settlement. So this is prior to the 1600s. And it coexisted with the wolves. There were wolves living in here, but they used different habitats. The coyote was more of a brushland and not open land coyote. And the coyote, basically the numbers were limited by the number of wolves that were around. And we did there were a lot of changes to the landscape in North America beginning in the 1600s and extending out. And the distribution of the coyote they actually benefited from a lot of these changes, clearing woods and creating farmland, more patchwork of habitats. And at the same time, we had a whole department, a federal agency responsible for eradicating the wolf. And then this is the present distribution of the coyote. So you can see that the coyote has expanded northward, southward, eastward, and westward. And Long Island is right. Cursor right here, and it's not colored in. And Long Island is the last significant landmass not to be colonized by coyotes. So that's happening as we speak. And by the way, Long Island is the largest island in the lower 48. Okay. So there was a lot of debate about whether coyotes were really in the East before European settlement. And a bunch of researchers looked at museum specimens. They also looked at stuff from archaeological digs. And they tried to, okay, let's take another shot at this distribution. And they basically confirmed that they were centered in the western part of the United States and southern Canada. And it's very closely related to forest cover. So where there was a lot of climax forest, mature forest, yeah, that was the realm of the wolf and not the coyote. Whoops, sorry. Yeah, so this is just showing the two pathways around the Great Lakes, and the ones that came along the north side of the Great Lakes are the ones that we have in New York. And they had more encounters with wolves in southern Canada to interbreed with. So there's more wolf DNA in those in general. And this is just a interesting depiction of the two wolf species, the current and original range of the gray wolf on the left, and the distribution of the red wolf, which is much, much smaller in the southeastern states. And apparently, as a result of the I guess, more successful persecution of the red wolves over time, as I said, there's less wolf genes in the southeastern coyotes. So little bit about the natural history of the coyote. In terms of what they eat, there's an ecological term that is called that they're very plastic, meaning they're very moldable, malleable. And that term means that they basically, it would be easier to describe what they don't eat than what they do eat. They'll eat just about anything. They're bigger than our red and gray foxes, so they can eat larger mammals. They will go after fawns. They're not all that successful in taking down adult deer. There are exceptions to that. When you have a lot of snow cover, they can, and the deer are concentrated in deer yards where they're under like conifers. The coyotes can get in there and chase them out of the deer yard where the snow cover is a lot less deep, and into the deep snow where, depending on the snow conditions, the coyotes might be able to run across the crust that's developed, and the deer with their sharp hooves will break through, and the coyotes can actually catch them. But as a general rule, a healthy white-tailed deer where there's no snow cover, so this is what's going to happen here on Long Island. They're not really going to impact our overabundant deer herds, with the exception of maybe slowing down the growth rates with taking some of the fawns. Okay, and there is a photo here in the lower left of one with a adult Canada goose. Again, that's pretty rare, with the exception of a goose that might be ill or might be injured. They do go after the Canada goose nests and prey on the young or the goslings. Okay, so this is a little bit of the history of coyotes here. And one of the challenges with the coyote and some other animals that have recolonized former habitat, like the bobcat and the fisher from the north, getting across onto Long Island, where the closest point is a very dense urban area, is not easy. So New Jersey has bobcats, and Westchester has bobcats, and Connecticut has bobcats. But that would be, I won't say never, but it's a challenge for a kind of animal to make it over here. So the closest point for the coyotes to get over here is from the Bronx. And we'll go through a couple of things. So the first sighting in the Bronx was 1995. And there's a group called Gotham Coyote that's part of our Long Island Coyote Study Group. So they've been looking at coyotes now for 15, 20 years and documenting different things. We had the sighting that some of you might remember in 2004, a coyote on like a floe of ice off of Queens. And the first resident coyote was living in a building very close to JFK Airport, 2009. And we also had our first coyote that made it over to Fisher's Island that year. So that's a 2-mile swim. There are a couple little like rocky outcrops that it could rest on, but basically nothing to eat there. So it's not going to hang out there, but yeah, that's a 2-mile swim over to Fisher's. And let's see, first sighting on the South Fork was in 2013 in a farm field in Sagaponack. So the question that popped into my head was, could that coyote have that's on the South Fork, could that have come from Fisher's Island, which at that point had a breeding pair for some years now? Or is it possible that it's a juvenile from the Bronx pairs that just kept going and passed through all this great habitat for some reason, wanted to be in the Hamptons, heard that was the place to be. And it is possible. Both are possible, but it's not too far. Juveniles have been known to disperse as far as 100 miles from their natal den. Why? That's another question. So the first breeding on Long Island was near LaGuardia Airport in 2016, and that didn't end well. So they had, there were 2 adults, a male and a female. There was a sub-adult that was helping with the pups. They were, their den was near the employee parking lot in a little tiny wood lot. And they had 9, I think it was 9 pups. So there were 12 in all. I think it was 8 pups and there were 11 coyotes in total. So the employees were, they're coming and going all hours of the night. They started noticing the pups when the pups were roaming around outside of the den and tossing them food, and the pups got habituated to humans and being fed. And the authorities decided that this was a potential problem. It was a dangerous situation. They decided to trap and kill all of the coyotes. They got all but one. And we don't know what happened to the other one, but it might be one of them that's still hanging around in Nassau County. Can everyone hear me now?
Yeah, Mike, when they killed those coyotes, didn't they report anything to authorities or anything, or wildlife? I guess not.
Yeah, it was a decision that was made in consultation with the Department of Environmental Conservation. And it was a situation. Was a really good lesson for us. For us on the Long Island Coyote Study Group, because if we can't get the word out to people to not feed coyotes, then we're going to have problems. And there's no nice solution to this. What are you going to do? You're going to move them somewhere? Where are you going to move them?
Right.
No, they have a homing instinct. They have a territory. That's their territory. They're established there. So fast forward, since you brought up that question, that's been the focus of the Coyote Study Group. We created a brochure. We got the word out to all the public officials because they're going to be answering the phone calls about how to coexist with coyotes.
Mhm.
And I just want to remind everybody, because sometimes we think about, oh, the coyotes, you know, we're not used to that. We're not used to that. We're the only place in the lower 48 that hasn't been living with coyotes for a long time. They've been living with coyotes upstate New York for, you know, half a century. They've been living with coyotes in Chicago for a half a century. They've been living with coyotes in the West and in California, in Los Angeles and in San Francisco for many decades. And everything's cool. So we can do this. It's been done before. So related to this, there's been a coyote living in Central Park in the Rambles for which, you know, as you as birders probably are all aware of this because everybody seems to know it's there. And people know, okay, leave it alone. You know, they get a glimpse at it. They don't toss it popcorn or hot dog, you know, and it's behaving itself. It's fine. So far, so good. So it can be done. I got to use this arrow here. Boom. Okay, so this is a photo of a female in the Bronx, and they started breeding there in 2012. So is that 9 years ago? And again, this is a photo from the South Fork, 2013. So I didn't mention this. This is forgot to point this out. Another really good telltale feature of the coyote, unless it's like galloping away, the tail hangs down, straight down, or maybe a little angle. But most domesticated dogs, the tail curls up. There's very few domesticated dogs that don't have that feature. So that's a good thing to look for. Because you might get a fleeting glance from your car, and that's something to hone in on, the tail. This is the LaGuardia story. So this is 2016. Yeah, there wasn't any real, at that point, there wasn't any real good solution. One of our colleagues in the Long Island Coyote Study Group tried to spend a lot of time there hazing the coyotes, which is, you know, throwing things at them, yelling at them, trying to reinstill fear in humans, but he was outnumbered, you know. So let's see, last winter, of 2020, we had a photo of a coyote and Robert Moses. And this, let's see, this fall, I guess it was, there's one of the park rangers there, Fire Island National Seashore. No, it was this winter because we had snow, and he managed to track it, and he set up a camera and he got photos of it. It was in the wilderness area at that point, but it was traveling a lot. It was roaming all over Fire Island. So this is some of the folks that are involved in the Coyote Study Group. And we have, there's a couple of new folks that I don't think are, no, North Fork, Audubon. Yeah, Jennifer Murray's doing a lot of work on the North Fork for us. And she recently thinks she may have found a den site where there's a pair there. So that's going to be, we want to check that out very soon, see what's going on there. Maybe set up a camera there. And these are our goals: to document the establishment of a breeding population here on Long Island, monitor their impacts. We have a number of ecologists in our study group. And it's going to be interesting. How are they going to impact, for example, we have a lot of raccoons on Long Island. And a lot of research of coyote and raccoon interactions, the coyotes don't, it's not like a major part of their diet or anything like that. Raccoons could kind of hold their own, I think, on a healthy raccoon, but um, they tend to avoid the coyotes. They tend to avoid. So we might reduce the amount of territory that the raccoons can occupy. And you got to remember that the raccoons and the red foxes on Long Island, their populations go through this boom and bust cycle here. That's not the normal for elsewhere in their range. And a lot of you are familiar with this. The raccoons get different diseases like distemper, and you walk around the woods one year and you'll see dead raccoons all over the place. I saw this at Shoe Swamp when I was doing the otter survey back in 2008. Not a mark on them, but it's a density dependent disease. The fox's density dependent disease is the mange. And that cycle is somewhere around 8 years. It's not exact, but it's when their numbers get very, very large for a given area, and the disease just goes through the whole population quickly. The mange doesn't kill them, it's a skin mite, but it so taxes their immune system that they die of other things that they normally would be able to fend off. And for some years, then you rarely see a red fox. So the coyote, we don't have on Long Island, we don't have any, we lost the wolf. Wolf was part of the Long Island fauna before European colonization. We put a bounty on the wolves right away. And we also had a bounty on the bobcat. And bobcats hung in there a little longer than the wolves. But those are two, high on the food pyramid carnivores. And without those, some of we call them mesocarnivores or mesopredators, their populations are not really well balanced. So that coyote might help that out. So we're doing a lot of training. I just noticed all of our numbers are 1. I don't know how that happens. We also train, I guess they're all important. We train volunteers to assist in field work, and that's been a lot of fun. I really like doing that. I did that with the Otter Project as well, teaching people how to identify coyote scat and distinguish it from red fox scat. There's a lot of overlap, but there are some markers that you could say, oh no, this is definitely a coyote. And also some tracking. It was really fun to get out this winter because we did have almost 2 weeks of snow where we could go out and we could actually follow the route of the coyotes through the landscape and learn all sorts of cool things about them. And the main thing, and this has the 4 stars at the beginning and the 4 stars at the end, is educating people on how to coexist with coyotes. Oh, go over that in a bit. So we're doing monitoring with remote cameras, and we're doing scat surveys, as I mentioned. The scat gets sent to the American Museum of Natural History for analysis. And looking at tracks. So there's a couple things about wild canids. They have a very neat track pattern. Up at the top is a direct register. So the right rear foot will fall right on top of the right front. And that's called a direct register. It looks like a pogo stick went down along the sand there. And in the lower photograph, you can see some things. The toes aren't splayed. This is from Fisher's Island. And the nails are sharp. They all point in one direction forward. And I have a little diagram of this here. So one thing to look at is the nails all pointing straight ahead. Another thing you can look at is you can draw an X between the toe pads and the heel pad and not touch the pads themselves, the print left by it's very, very neat. And I have a domestic dog as a contrast to that. So this is a domestic dog track, and the toes are splayed, the nails are blunter, and you can't draw a line without between the toe pads and not hit the heel pad. So you have to do this kind of K or H kind of a thing. Now, having said that, it has a little bit of domestic dog in the eastern coyotes. So you really have to look at a lot of different things all together before you come up with an answer as to whether this is a domestic dog or a coyote. It's tricky, very tricky. Again, the toes are all pointing in different directions. And this is a cat track, and cats are very different. You can't do that X. It's a huge heel pad compared to the heel pad of a dog, even a domestic dog. The heel pad is which is on the left, and the toe pad, the 4 toe pads are on the right. The heel pad is the dominant feature of the track, and it has these lobes at the back end. So some ecological impacts that we're curious about here on Long Island. Long Island is kind of an unusual situation. Even some of the big cities in the rest of the United States, they have other carnivores in the area, but we're kind of isolated here, and we have a huge population of white-tailed deer and some other species that the coyote might be able to whittle down. But according to the literature, although they're taking advantage of the ecological niche that's been left vacant by our persecution of the wolves in the East, they are much more omnivorous than wolves, and they're much less capable of taking down large ungulates. So now, on the east end of Long Island, where we have a lot of deer, here's a question. We also have a lot of fragmented habitat and a lot of deer fencing. And the coyotes might learn to use that artificial part of the landscaping, in which I mean the deer fencing, and figure out ways to corner the deer in those against those fences, because they're all over on the east end. Yeah, so we expect they may slow the growth, but they're not going to be a lot of people are excited about the possibility that the coyotes might really do a number on our overpopulated deer, which, by the way, is definitely impacting our forest ecosystem. It's having a huge impact on the forest understory out here. Rodent populations is interesting because the coyote and the fox do coexist, but the fox numbers are probably going to drop as the coyotes move into the neighborhood. And the foxes, there's nothing that can catch. There's a saying, the red fox is the best designed mousetrap ever created. The coyote will go after mice as well, and voles, but not to the extent that foxes will, apparently. So rodent populations might increase a little bit. The feral cat issue is a really interesting one. That's an argument that, you know, a lot of communities can never come to an agreement on. And Fisher's Island is a really excellent case study of this. So they have some beautiful natural grassland areas. They lost all their grassland breeding birds due to feral cats. And they couldn't come to an agreement as to deal with the feral cat population. In other words, take them out, trap them and get rid of them. So for a decade, while that argument went back and forth, the coyotes moved in, and within 2 years, the coyotes got rid of all the feral cats on the island, and the grassland birds have made a comeback. By the way, that's an issue out here on the East End. There's cat colonies all over the place, including on nature conservancy property, state park land. And the idea is you neuter the animals, and eventually you feed them and you house them, and eventually they're going to go away. But people keep dropping, you know, new cats into these feral cat colonies, so it's an ongoing thing. So the rabbits and squirrels are a bigger part of their diet than we find with foxes, so they might reduce those. So these are all questions that we're interested in. I mentioned the impacts on fox and raccoons, the mesocarnivores, the Canada geese. It's another animal that we have in plenty supply. And one of the most important things, one of the most important takeaways is, you know, how to minimize conflicts with coyotes. And we're just following the lead of what everyone else has figured out. And it comes down to don't feed the coyotes, eliminate food sources. So be careful about your garbage and your feeding your pets outside, eliminating the availability of bird seeds. Apparently there's things you can get to catch the bird seed to keep it from falling on the ground. And hazing, you know, what do you do if you see a coyote? Be aggressive in your behavior and teach it a lesson that, you know, don't mess with us. And don't allow your pets to run free. So, you know, in terms of cats, I think most people are hep to, you know, if you really care for your cat, it shouldn't be running around outside all the time. The studies have shown that they live longer as an indoor cat, and they certainly are a big impact on birds. So I'm preaching to the choir on that. But everybody today seems to have one of these accessory dogs, you know, that you can put in your pocketbook and walk around everywhere, restaurants, go to, you know, food, shopping, and, you know, they're not much bigger than a cat. And you're gonna have to be careful about that. So I guess that keeping it in your pocketbook is a good way to go. I think that might be it. Yeah, that's it. Back to the Coyote and Nassau counties. So I'm open to questions if anybody has any questions. And oh yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty much on time.
You mentioned before that the reduction in the vole pop and mice population might affect foxes. Do you think it would have any effect on owl populations?
Well, I don't think the foxes will be impacted by. So what I was trying to say is that the coyote's not as good a mouser. So they're the rodent the small rodents like the mice and the voles. As the coyote moves in and we have less less territory for the red fox, because that territory is being used by a coyote pair. There's going to be maybe more rodents in that area. So I guess you could say there would be more food for other animals that rely on voles and mice. But I don't think that that's an issue today. I think we have enough mice and voles even for the hawks and owls. I'm not aware of any documentation that they're dealing with a food shortage. One of
Mike,
the, yeah.
there was actually a study in California, and when they found that when coyotes moved into an area and eliminated the feral cats, the small rodent population actually rose.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we anticipate that on Long Island, the small rodent population might increase a little bit. But the big issue with our hawks and owls and other top of the food chain animals that go after mice, voles, and rats is the use of poison. That's a big problem. You know, people, you know, every hardware store has decon, and when you put that out around your yard, those animals might get picked off by a bird of prey, and that's a big problem.
There was a debate on Facebook. Somebody put up a picture of some coyote scat, and one person that claimed to be in the know said that the coyotes will kill the red foxes to eliminate them from their area because they go after the same sort of prey.
So we're not seeing that. That's a possibility. You know, they're as a general rule. I think it doesn't come down to one killing the other so much as the red fox has got to find another spot. So we actually have red foxes and coyotes living together in this section of Nassau County.
And what about
So right now, I think that it might be because there's such a rich food source there. Both of them can coexist.
Right.
But when push comes to shove, coyote's going to win out.
what about the mange problem? You know, a lot of red foxes. I see a lot of healthy red foxes, and then not too long after, I see mangy red foxes in the same area.
Yeah, so on Long Island, the fox population goes through this boom and bust cycle. So when that's really driven by sarcoptic mange. It's a mite that infects them. It's a skin,
Right.
it's a skin
Now,
infection.
that'll affect the coyotes as well, though, right?
No, apparently that's not an issue with and it's not an issue with the gray fox either.
Okay. Nice.
So, and it's density dependent. That's the thing. It just doesn't happen on its own. It happens, it's always there. But it becomes a real problem when the fox population hits a certain ceiling. And then it just goes rampant through the population and really weakens them. So I guess it's when you have a lot of hosts, the mites really take advantage of that, and they cause some issues with that host. That's clear. I have to look into that a little bit more. I mean, I know it's a density dependent thing. So when you have a few red foxes around, they don't get the mange. It's when the population hits that high point, the mange go. You know, there's just a lot of mangy foxes around, and a lot of foxes die. And it's similar to what the raccoons experience with distemper. It has to do with the population maxing out at a certain point or hitting a certain high number, and then distemper travels very fast through that population.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah.
Someone just sent a message on the chat. The coyotes in Nassau County, are they living in the North Shore or the South Shore?
I think Robert Moses is at Nassau County.
Yeah, the South Shore.
Yeah. So, but Yeah, so they're in both, but they're mostly, they seem to be mostly concentrated closer to the Bronx and the Queens. So that's, yeah, they're up in the northern part of Nassau County for the most part.
Yeah,
Well,
Mike,
one of the things that we're learning is, as we get the word out and we look around and, there have been sightings all over the place. So like I said earlier, we have the on the North Fork, there apparently is a pair. We don't, I assume it's a male and a female. We have a photograph of a pair on the South Fork from like a year ago, but they disappeared. We don't know what happened to them. Can't find any evidence of them on the South Fork.
Someone recently said they saw one in Manhattan.
I didn't understand that question. Could you
Someone
repeat?
recently said they saw one in Manhattan.
You're breaking up.
Oh,
Mike, this is Barbara Gabrielle. A couple of questions. Have you tried to radio collar them so that they could be tracked by the radio tracking? Like, I know they do that with
Right.
with the wolves.
Yeah, so the Gotham Coyote guys have some experience with that. That's Chris Nagy and Mark Weckel. And we have a subcommittee, myself, them, and Russ Burke, and we're looking into that. We're pricing out hiring a professional guy who can live trap them, and then we have a vet who has offered to do the veterinarian side of everything. They have to be on site monitoring the animal, and so I think he works for the Bronx Zoo.
Mm.
And it's the USDA that has these professional guys based in the Long Island region that would actually lure the coyotes in, trap them, and the vet would then administer the drugs that put them out for long enough that we can make measurements and weigh them and everything, get the collar on them. The collars, though, are amazing. I mentioned that I studied elk in Banff. I had 40 radio collared elk, but I had an antenna. I had to drive around and triangulate. No, you can sit at home on your computer now, and you get these cell phone things that show up on a map on your computer. Pretty amazing. Yeah, so we're looking into that to see how they move through this real fragmented landscape, and yeah.
Yeah, when I actually was writing about red wolves and I went down to Carolina, and it was amazing. I mean, the difference in mobility for the trackers to be able to not have all the gear and everything versus the GPS, but very much more expensive. I remember them saying that. But Mike, another question is: do the coyotes don't tend to hunt in packs, do they?
So that's a good question. And what I'm learning, so I'm new to studying coyotes, and I had heard that there's the alpha and the alpha male and da da da. It ends up that David Leck, who some of you may know that name. He was the famous wolf biologist going way back to 70s. And he's actually apologized for he adopted a lot of this terminology, the pack and the alpha wolf and this and that and the other thing. And years later, studying wolves, he realized that it's a family unit. It's basically a family unit. And once the young learned how to deal with the range and hunt and take care of themselves, they go off on their own.
Because that would be one reason that they wouldn't be as successful hunting bigger ungulates, because with a wolf group, there's the strategy and all
Yeah.
that. Whereas with a coyote, if you're a solo, you're way, way outnumbered in weight and everything. So that would make sense that they'd have a hard time taking down a full-grown deer.
Right.
there
So, but as a family unit, that's something I need to do a little bit more reading on. I know that there are a lot of coyotes that are solo,
Mhm.
and they are tolerated a lot of times by the territorial pair, the male and the female, that have an actual territory they defend against other pairs, but not necessarily against a lone coyote. It's really interesting. It's a fascinating animal, and we still have a lot to learn about it. But the question is whether or not a male and a female could hunt cooperatively. They're very smart animals. Whether they could hunt cooperatively and take down a deer.
So do you know that in Port Washington, the golf course has seen them for a few years now, the Port Washington golf course, Harbor Links golf course.
Right.
And then it's next to bike, Hempstead Harbor, sort of it's a mountain bike thing, but it's a park. Yeah, so you've heard that, you've known they're there.
So Mike Vitti, who is the president
Yes,
of
right.
Climb, a friend of mine, he basically took the lead and documented what was going on there. He set up a camera. He's got photos of the animals, the two animals, and he's collected scat. And yeah, we're on that. That's an interesting situation. They have a great habitat going all the way up to Sands Point Preserve, and I found some, as I was saying, it's very difficult to say conclusively these are coyote tracks, but 2 years ago I found some tracks across the street from the Sands Point Preserve. There's another golf course there, but I never found any scat that we could analyze to be conclusive about that.
Mike, there's a lot of questions of people of sightings, like the Harbor Links Golf Course, Manhasset, Glenwood Landing. I just wanted to ask you, what do you think is, they move, they migrate. So what is like the number of coyotes do they know that's on Long Island right now that you know?
Okay, so there's a single coyote we know of in Alley Pond Park area. There's a single coyote on Fire Island National Seashore. There's 6 coyotes that we know of in the northern part of Nassau County. There's apparently 2 coyotes in Southold. And as I said, the South Fork coyote or coyotes, there's been no sign of them. Yeah, there's a big gap in the Pine Barrens for some reason, and it may just be that we don't have enough people out there, because it's such a large area with a lot of open space. They may be in there as well, but we don't know that. And then of course Fisher's Island, we hope to actually pin down the number. Now, one thing that's a very common misconception is when they have a habit of responding to sirens and fire horns that go off at like noon, the noon whistle. And it sounds like, a half a dozen animals. but it's not that many. It's just sounds a lot like a lot more animals. I've heard this dozens of times. People say,
Oh.
yeah. No, it's two coyotes responding, and it's hard to believe it's not six. So a lot of people on Fisher's Island think there's as many as 3 pairs over there, but I don't think there's enough room, 2 square miles. But we can pin down those numbers with the DNA work.
Okay, thank you.
You're looking
They
forward to that.
swim to Fisher's Island?
Say that again?
Did they swim to Fisher's Island?
Yeah, they had to swim to Fisher's Island. Yep. Fisher's Island's a cool spot. It's a beaver has made it over there, but didn't stick around. They've got otters. They have a great horned owl nesting in an osprey pole, so it's very visible. I guess we had one of those too in Cold Wildlife Refuge. But I think they have barred owls there too.
Mike, do we know how heavy you are? What is the average weight of the coyotes that you're talking about?
25 to 45 pounds, so averaging, in the 30s.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So they don't seem to take any of the nesting birds that are on the beaches for their eggs?
I don't know. That's a good question. I would think as an opportunistic, or as we would say, a plastic diet, it's going to take advantage of anything that's easy for it to feed on.
Yeah, I was going to say, if they swim towards Long Island from Fisher's Island, the first thing they're going to get to is the tern colonies on Little Gull Island.
Yeah. On Great Gull Island.
Or Great Gull and Little Gull,
Yeah.
yeah.
Terns are not real tolerant. I got attacked by at least 300 this afternoon.
Well, that's true, but but chicks
That's true.
are easy pickings.
Yeah. So the young are probably not going to disperse until the fall. I think the tern issue would be pretty much done by August.
Yeah, they'll be up in the air.
Yeah. So that might work out okay. And I'm sure Barbara would give us a heads up if she did run into some coyotes.
Suppose I run into a coyote. I suppose you'll want to know who do I contact?
Yeah, you could contact me or Enrico Nordone at Seatuck. We have a section of the Seatuck website that's got information about the eastern coyote, and yeah, you can report anything there. But you can call me or email me as well.
Do you have that information? Can you post it on the chat?
Yeah, I could do that. Yep.
I might mention that the Linnaean Society of New York had a terrific program 2 weeks ago about the eastern coyotes given by Dr. Ronald Case.
Oh, yeah. He's one of the preeminent researchers.
Yeah, and he answers a lot of these questions about hunting and genetics and so on.
Mhm.
And it was recorded, and I assume it'll be available publicly. So you might want to be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I don't see the chat. Oh, there it is. Got it. Yeah, okay. So let's see. So it's I guess I just sent that to Addie. I don't know how to do like to everybody. To everyone. Okay. Gotta do that again. Everyone publicly. Okay. So it's mbottini@seatuck.org. It's in case I don't know how to figure this out. For some reason I have Addie on here and it's private.
Just,
I clicked everyone publicly.
And now you just type underneath it where the icon is.
Okay, but it still says to Addie, so.
no, you've got to
You
check, you've got to
not-
check everyone in meeting.
Let's see.
Well, you said it. mbottini@seatuck.org.
Yeah.
That should do it.
So I'm checking off everyone publicly.
It's there.
It's there.
It's there.
It came up.
Yeah, there it
Okay.
is.
Oh, I see. Two. Yeah. All right.
Mike, one of the questions were from Janet Parga. She was asking, what diseases do the coyotes get?
You know, most of the ones that any wildlife species would get, you know, rabies, they might get rabies, canine distemper.
Okay. Because I saw one in Stoke State Forest in New Jersey once, was a very young a coyote, and it was sick. And I went back to the state, what do you call them? You know, at the environmental center. And I never, you know, I didn't know why the coyote was sick. It was a young coyote. Wasn't very big, but it was sick.
Mike, how long have you been studying the coyotes on Long Island?
Just a year. I think it was a year ago. We set up the study group quite a long time ago. Some you know, maybe 5 years ago. But there was a lot of interest with the university types that were on the committee to try and get funding and you know, get some work for grad students and whatnot. They had all these plans to look at the flora and fauna before the coyotes, and then the impacts of the coyote on the flora and fauna. It's very ambitious stuff, but they didn't get the grants, so really nothing was happening. And then we started getting, you know, these definitive sightings, and it's not, you know, I live in East Hampton, so I'm pretty far from the action, you know, up in Nassau County. But there were a couple things that I was doing up there with teaching groups with high school teachers, and you know, some of the sites I was seeing coyote scat, so I started collecting it, and the American Museum of Natural History offered to do the analysis in the lab for the DNA. So then I started training people to you know, where to look and how to collect it, and yeah.
Do you know the people?
We almost have, I think the first scat I collected was in June last year in Nassau County, and so we'll have a year's worth in another month.
Thank you.
Mike, do you know the people at the Wolf Conservation Center in Cross River in Westchester County? Do you know them at all?
What's it called?
Wolf Conservation Center in Westchester.
No.
They would be a really great resource for you. They've been very involved in the red wolf and the Mexican wolf reintroduction programs and breeding programs. and they also do educational programs with ambassador wolves, the gray wolves. But they might be a really good resource for you because they just know the canine world. Maggie Howell is the director, and really good people. I worked with them when I was doing the research for my Red Wolves book, and they're very, very good people.
I'll ask Chris Nagy about that. Chris is with the Mianus Gorge Preserve.
And then I'm sure. Wait a minute, Chris. What's his last name?
Nagy, Nagy.
Oh, and he might know the person who's there's the director, and then there's the wolf person and the biological end of things, and that may be his partner, I'm thinking.
Yeah. So Chris did a lot of work with coyotes in New York City.
Okay.
He's part of the Gotham Coyote Project.
How do you spell his last name?
Nagy.
Okay.
Yep.
Jean, do we have any more questions for Mike?
No, I think that's it, except somebody asked about how do people get involved volunteering?
Yeah, so as I said, Seatuck has a website with lots of information. Should be able to download the brochure and coexisting with coyotes. It's very simple, but it'll be nice to. Right now, that's our main focus, and just getting the word out to your membership would be terrific.
Okay.
And then is there any specific things that you want to get involved in? You just drop us a line via the website. You can contact me, and we'll plug you in somewhere.
Okay, thank you, Mike,
Okay.
for speaking tonight.
Oh yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
Mike, my apology. My computer was frozen, but I want to thank you for making presentation about the coyotes to our organization. I'm the president, and I'm usually here on time, so my apology. And but from what I heard, it was a very good presentation and some great pictures. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, and keep up the good work. Audubon is a great organization, and I hope to see you guys. I'm hoping that we can pull off the real gathering of the conservation clan for Long Island at the next conference 2022. We skipped this year, skipped last year, but I really miss that, and I know you guys are a big part of it. It's just nice to get together with everybody, and hopefully we can do that in March of 2022.
Are you talking about the science conference?
The Long Island Natural History Conference.
Oh, yeah, missed that.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else that anybody would like to speak to Mike about or ask him a question? I don't see anything. Mike, again, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.
Thanks for the great presentation.
Have a great Memorial weekend, everyone.
You too.
You too.
Everybody enjoy.